Hey, business building warrior, welcome. It's another episode of Silent Sales Machine Radio, and I'm so excited that you've joined me today to spend a little bit of time improving your e-commerce income streams. If you're new around here, this podcast is dedicated to helping you use the internet creatively to launch and grow multiple streams of income, starting and emphasizing the Amazon opportunity, specifically where 99% of all of our new students start is what we call the replens model. And we've got hundreds of success story interviews with students who have taken that exact path. And we love interviewing them on this podcast. So a couple times a week, you can hear great interviews with the successful students from our flagship training course that's called the Proven Amazon course. You can go to provenamazoncourse.com and see details. It's the highest rated Amazon seller training in the industry, by far more success stories than anyone. It's actually the oldest course as well, with the largest team working on the content, keeping it updated, new refreshing ideas coming in constantly. It's a library of many, many different ways to make money on Amazon, but we start off with the same basic foundational training for every new student, and that's the replens model. And that's a lot of what this podcast tends to be about, is our successful students following that course, like I said. But today, midweek, Wednesdays or so, once a week, we like to bring on what we call Coach's Corner. And this is a chance for some of the coaching team leaders in our organization, some of the coaches, to talk about their business. Because if you didn't realize it, our coaching program has been around for 20 years. Currently, we have 60 coaches on our team. I have the same coaching director today that I started with 20 years ago, Nathan Bailey, and we've got coaching directors as well. We love bringing them to the stage, putting them in the spotlight, having them create content, do presentations at our live events. So a lot of the people that you saw, we had 40 breakout sessions at our most recent live event. A lot of the people that you saw on stage and leading the breakout sessions were the coaches on our team, who all have a couple things in common. If you've never heard me describe it before, this is how we've built our coaching team. Step one, they have to succeed wildly with the concepts from the Proven Amazon course. They started out as a brand new student, maybe just like you, had never done any e-commerce before at all, came into our community, got into the Proven Amazon course, started to succeed. Maybe they got a coach, maybe they didn't. You don't have to have a coach. You can certainly speed up the process, however. But they started to demonstrate competence and success with the models we teach. And then they also demonstrated they had a teacher's heart. They just loved pouring into others. They understand the abundance mindset of our community, meaning we don't see each other as competitors. We see each other as fellow business building warriors who are there to support and help each other grow great businesses. I think that's the strength of this community. Thousands of people with that attitude. That's a pretty powerful Facebook group. It's free, actually. You can come join us and see for yourself. There's a link at silentjim.com, spelled Jim, J-I-M, that's me. Silentjim.com has a link to our free Facebook group. You can see our coaches and all of our 73,000 plus students and others from around the world using the internet creatively to launch and grow multiple streams of income. But our coaches, those two things they have in common, remember I just mentioned, they've succeeded wildly over an extended period of time with their own business using the models we teach, and they've got a teacher's heart. Today, we're going to meet one of those guys. You're going to meet Grant Douglas. He did a great presentation at our most recent event talking about how to ramp up your business quickly as an Amazon seller. And he's interviewed by two of the coaching directors on our team that many people have come to love and appreciate and enjoy. Of course, I'm talking about Brian and Robin Joy Olson. They do our Coaches Corner episodes on Wednesdays. So I say all that just to get you up to speed in case you're new around here. If you've been around a while, you may have known some of that already, but you're going to really enjoy hearing about Grant. He built a seven-figure Amazon business very quickly after the church where he was working had to make some cutbacks during COVID. Remember, a lot of churches were closing down and uncertain, and there were some pay cuts that affected every industry, including ministries. So he went and started his Amazon business at that point in time, and it has since completely flourished, changed the financial future of his family. And he describes what he sells, how he finds it, how he's built his business, what this community means to him, what it's like to coach. And yeah, he's available as a coach right now. It seems like every time we bring one of our great coaches onto the podcast, their schedule kind of fills up pretty quickly with new students. So if you're listening to this right as you hear it, right as it's released, that might be a good time to say, hey, I heard that episode with Grant today, I really resonated with him. Or maybe Brian and Robin Joy, or maybe some of the other coaches that we've interviewed through our other episodes. Call our coaching office. There's a link again at silentjimdotcom to our coaching offers. Have a conversation, see if it's a good fit for you. We're very proud of the fact that we've had 10,000 students over 20 years go through our coaching program. Just an incredible number. We're doing it right. We're creating success stories. We're interviewing those stories on this show every week. And if you're ready to take your business seriously, take it to the next level, if you've got the margin in your life, which is one of the things we love to talk about around here, are you mentally, physically, meaning you're not sick, so sick that you can't start a business, right? Mentally, physically, emotionally, even relationally. Does your spouse think you're crazy for trying to start another business? Well, you need to ramp in nice and slow and bring them along. You don't want to be fighting them the whole time you're trying to launch a business, right? Are you financially positioned? Do you have a little bit of margin, a little bit of extra space in all those important areas? If so, well, hey, we've got a business model that's going to work out really well for you. We've taught it to many, many people. ProvenAmazonCourse.com has details, or if you want to go faster, go to silentjim.com, check out the coaching offer there. And now let's turn the microphone over to two of the great coaching leaders on our team and their guest today. You're going to enjoy this episode. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome back to Silent Sales Machine Radio. We are your co-hosts. I'm Brian.
And I'm Robin Joy.
And this is Coach's Corner. Today, we're joined by a special guest, Grant Douglas, who we're going to do a Coach's Spotlight on today. Welcome to the show, Grant.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Always excited to have coaches on. And I would say we've been looking forward to this one. Unfortunately, we were just together a couple of weeks ago back in Ohio. We had a couple of sessions that conflicted with yours, and we're still catching up on the rest. So I'm really looking forward to what you're going to share with us today. But why don't you start off by kind of giving us a little bit of background of how you got started in the Amazon business?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm relatively new to the Amazon space. I started in 2021. And so just a little over 2.5 years. I first started just as a backup plan in case I was going to lose my job. It was during the times of COVID where we saw, a lot of jobs and different spots where I kind of saw the writing on the wall where I thought that might happen. And then it did happen 2 months later in March. And my wife was also pregnant at the time with our third kid. So, it was a very hectic, stressful time. I had a friend that did Amazon on the side. And so, I personally loved my job that I had. I got to work from home. And especially once COVID started, having really flexible hours. And I wanted something that did the same thing. And I heard that Amazon did.
Let me jump in there and just ask, what was that job?
I was in ministry. And so, during that time, there were a lot of churches that were downsizing and struggling with attendance. And it was the same thing for me. So I left that. Well, the good news is I was allowed to stay on for 4 more months, and I was guaranteed pay through July. Luckily, they still extended that to August. They asked me to stay on an extra month. So I had this full-time pay that I had to replace, and was able to work on Amazon kind of on the side with all of my extra hours until I had to leave my job. And then by that time I was making full-time pay, and the rest is history. So here I am now.
Wow, that's a pretty great story. What was your strategy of choice or method that you were using for Amazon?
Yeah, so I, now I've done a little bit of everything, but really in the beginning, the thing that spoke most to me was OA, online arbitrage, just because, my son was born mid-March, and so I wanted to be home. I wanted the flexibility, even though there is flexibility with RA and going into stores, it still just takes me away from the home a little bit more. And it's really easy to just hold my napping child while I'm sourcing online, like it makes things a little simpler. Yeah. So, it's real though. Like, that's the thing. It's not even just this thing you see on Instagram or that doing this from home. It's legit that, my wife can take a nap while I'm working, and it just worked. It works so good for us. It still works really good for us. My wife also is self-employed. She's a flower farmer, and her work goes in seasons. So this is actually the busy season for that right now. And in the off season, during Q4, she doesn't grow anything in the winter. So able to help
That
me a
works
little
out
bit
well.
more. Yeah. But yeah, I started with online arbitrage simply because I felt like it was just a better adjustment for the family. And since doing that only for about a year, I've worked into a few wholesale, a little bit of RA, but I stopped there. I haven't done private label or branding, anything like that yet.
Okay, great.
So what about getting into coaching? How did you become a coach? What was that journey like?
Yeah, so I have a group chat that I'm in with other seven-figure sellers, and it's not a mastermind. It's really just like if there's we have someone that does a decent amount of eBay, someone that does a decent amount of wholesale, and then me and a couple others, including Jessica Decker, are heavy into OA. And so, I mean, Jessica just said, "Hey, if ever anybody here wants to do coaching, just let me know." And I took the bait, and it's another stream of income. It's another thing that I can do as many hours as I want to. I could say no more clients for now, or just hang with my clients for a period of time. And so it matches the flexibility that I'm looking for in whatever job that I do. And I'm a teacher at heart. I mean, I prior to ministry, I taught English as a second language. I did GED courses for college dropouts and some international families that wanted to get their GED. And I'm really comfortable with just talking with people. And with online arbitrage, especially, I went from doing jobs where I'm always around people to being by myself in a computer with my kids and my wife. And there was a huge difference. And so I honestly was looking forward to the prospect of having more conversations again.
That's great.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Robin used to do ESL instruction as well.
Mhm.
And
Oh, really?
yeah, has a little bit of background in that. And, Robin's a very outgoing person. And so when she started working from home, I could tell that was quite an adjustment. And so whenever she had someone on a session like this, she's like all into it, which is great. You're getting the full experience, right?
Well, this is
Yeah.
an experience. I'm sure some of my clients would tell you.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned, like, life goes in seasons, and if anything, I think I pushed the people button too hard, during a period of my life, and now that my kids are 6, 4, and 2, that's a time that they do need a lot of time with me. They do need a lot of time with both their parents, and I don't have time for 10 friendships and 10 close relationships to meet up with every week. And like a lot of my relationships I have a handful, but a lot of them are texting and messaging because it's time consuming with young kids. And so that was sweet for a season. But yeah, around that same time, I found a group of guys to play basketball with, and I started coaching because I told my wife, like, I need to get out again.
Yeah.
It's time.
Yep. That happens
Great.
when you get cooped up for too long.
True.
Yeah.
It was crazy that I kind of got used to it, but then I was just so glad when that was over, and normal, at least some form of the old ways came back.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Some of them, yeah.
In some ways, it'll never be the same, but that's okay.
I can't prove this out. I just saw it on a data tab of some website recently, but I'm sure there's at least some morsel of truth to it, which is that we will spend 75% of all the time that we'll spend with our children. 75% of that happens before they're 12 years old.
Mm.
And then
Yeah.
you don't realize how fast that can disappear. And so being able to have a business like this where you can be at home and spend all that time during really the formative years, so important. I'm really coming to appreciate that a lot more now that we've got 2 grandsons who are about that
Yes.
same age too, where it's like now, and if the parents get 75% of the time and grandparents get even less of that. So we are really, trying to absorb as much of that as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of Amazon. And, I love talking to a few of my students that they have kids, some even a little bit older, that can help more than mine. Like mine, the extent that they can help is occasionally when I've gotten there was a big clearance of one of the wholesalers I was with. And we got several things that there were 100 units of, and it was just a bunch of stickering.
Mhm.
And so my 6 and 4-year-old could do that, and that was fine. But typically all they can do is they pop extra bubble mailers whatever you call it, when you send in. Yeah, and so I'll just throw all the extra ones out there and say, I'll give you each $1. You all get to jump and pop all these.
Yes,
and so
those boys would love that too.
Yeah, and so, but with some of my students that have older kids, then I mean, they absolutely can play a big part in prep. I don't know, I'm not an accountant, I don't know the logistics of it, but there's ways you can pay your kids before they're 14. You can, if they're yours, you can't. I'm not endorsing child labor here.
No child labor here.
But with your kids, like, you are able to pay them, and it is a tax write-off. And I'm looking forward to being able to do that, where you can even throw money just into an account for them that they don't touch till they're 18, and that's a tax write-off, but they're literally working and helping. And that's just the type of opportunities that Amazon can provide, let alone just like that. When I'm in here, and so I do a lot of self prep, and I have preppers, but like when they're here, it's me, maybe it's my mom, my mother-in-law, and we're all in the same, like, most of it's in this office here, but then the doors are open and some of us are out there, and it's basically like we've even watched the kids while we've been prepping, because it's able to work like that. And the time is fleeting. Like, I'm not going to get this forever, but I want to capitalize on both Amazon and the success while I can have it here. We never know what's going to happen 5-10 years down the road, but right now is a great time for Amazon. And then in 5-10 years down the road, my kids might not want to spend as much time as they do now with me. So I need to capitalize on that too.
No doubt.
That is absolutely true. And I love to see people getting their families involved. And when they have, whatever the age the children are, like you said, they can put stickers on, or, I have people who say, okay, go look at this list of ASINs and do the 3-step check and tell me which ones are testable. Depending on the age and the ability to do that kind of thing, it is truly a way to teach a child something that they can do hands-on, that doesn't have to feel like I'm in school and I have to memorize this stuff. But they learn so much that they really don't usually learn in school about business when they see you doing business and you let them be involved in that. I love seeing that.
Yeah. For my 6-year-old, I can't wait till he's a couple years older, because he's already wanting to sell his own things. Like, we get these like sewing kits, and he'll sew it together, and he says, I'm going to sell this to make some money. And it's like, well,
I love that.
I think grandma might buy that for a couple bucks from you. But like, if he ever gets into like inventions and things, like, man, I would love to do a private label thing with him, and just like, hey, let's just see if we can make this work, man. Yeah. But you can just see his brain turning and understanding things that probably most 6-year-olds don't, just because he can physically see the work. And when they ask me like, hey, like, why'd you work extra this time? It's like, hey, well, we're going to Disney next week, right? Like, I'm going to send in some extra things, helps pay for our trip. And instead of just, hey, where's dad? Well, dad's gone. He's working, he's making money, and they don't see it. And so they don't really know. But I think literally the concept of what I do and why I have to work is so tangible for them.
That's lovely.
Yeah. So we digress a little bit. So Jessica reaches out.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, I'll do it. And so how long ago was that?
I think it was Q4 last year, like November, December. I think I got my first clients a little before Christmas.
Okay, great. And so are you coaching on the same strategies that you execute today? So wholesale, OA, a little bit of RA?
Yeah, so that's most of them. I think Matt Thompson in the coaching program knows that I arbitrage is what I do. And I believe everybody that works with me knows that's what I do. There's some that do want to do a little bit beyond that. Some do want to lean heavier into wholesale. What works with the coaching program is that you do get 2 coaches. And so I have someone that I'm the proactive coach, and the reactive coach is Michael, who you talked with last week or last month. And it's great because I showed him all my arbitrage stuff, and Michael showed him some of his outlet sourcing. He happens to live next door to tons of outlets, and so he gravitates more towards that. And so it's great how most of my clients, they do a lot of RA, OA with a little bit of wholesale. But mostly for me, it's online arbitrage, and that's what I start with. But really, I've done it all. I've done a piece of it all. Especially the past 6 months, I do a lot more in store. I've tried to just add that to my wheelhouse of things. And really, I encourage clients, try everything, do everything, and see what clicks for you. OA has clicked for me more than anything else. And that's why I just go heavy into it. But if it's something else for you, absolutely dive down and I'll go down there with you.
Yeah, I think that is one of the maybe unsung heroic parts of the coaching program is that you get this mastermind with, if you're a coaching client, you get the mastermind with, if you've got a business partner, first of all, then your proactive coach, your reactive coach. And not that any of us will ever be together at the same time unless we meet up at a conference or something, but just being able to get the different perspectives can be so valuable. And I can tell when a client is really getting into it because they're leveraging everyone around them for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I don't see why not, right? If you're going to take that investment towards coaching, and if you ask someone like, hey, what's your opinion on the current state of Amazon and what's going to happen the next couple of years, you'll get a different answer from every single person. And really what you need to do is ask that to everybody, and then take in what they said and see what speaks to you, and try it and test it out. And what works for me here in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I do have a few good RA stores here, that might not work for someone that's in New York City or in a more rural area, and maybe if you do live next door to outlets, maybe you shouldn't even entertain OA. Man, go to those outlets first. And if you're the only one in town that goes there that sells on Amazon, you can make a killing. And so, yeah, ask everybody, get everybody's input on it, and do what works for your specific situation.
I agree. I tell people the same thing. We have so many sources of advice available to us in this community. Use them all. Listen to everybody. Nobody's right. Nobody's wrong. We have different opinions and different things that have worked for us than others. But then you can take all that and make it your own. And I feel like that's what makes room for all of us, because each of us have taken our own little twist on all of that we've been exposed to. And then we all have something more to give to the community and to our own businesses and each other.
Yeah, what you were talking about is something we heard recently from Larry and Sue, which is like, what do you have in your hand, right?
Yes.
What do you have in your hand? For you, Grant, I'm going to say you got jungle gyms in your hand, right?
Oh yeah. I actually went there. I went there last week. I have not done a deep dive sourcing there, but I messaged somebody. I was like, hey, have you all, there's a group of Cincinnati sellers that we message. And when I was in there, I said, have you sourced here before? And someone said I did, and I was very overwhelmed, and then I left. And so
it is a big, overwhelming place. We got last time we mentioned it on a podcast, people were messages, what's Jungle Gyms? Where I don't know, is that the only one? The one in Cincinnati?
There's two, but they're both in Ohio here. Okay. I think one's in Fairfield, Ohio, and one's in Cincinnati. And the store is, it's bigger than a Meijer if you've been in it. It's bigger than a super Walmart. And they have a lot of like local foods. And so, but yeah, like that's a great example that there's jungle gym like places everywhere, and I don't do this well enough, but I tell everybody is if you know some mom and pop stores that are near you, like, especially if you have some type of relationship with the people or people in the area. Yeah, man, if you go into any store and you walk in there and you say, hey, my name's Grant, I'm a bulk buyer. Do you mind if I just take some pictures, look around, see if there's anything I might want to buy in bulk from you? In the days of post-COVID, when most of these stores are struggling, they're not going to say no. And then you have access to a whole bunch of products that there's a good chance I don't have access to, and neither do a lot of other sellers.
And I love that, just the way you phrased it. I'm a bulk buyer. That sets the tone for everything. And there's no more questions you have to answer about that, right? It has a lot of things built into it, and it says a lot. And like if you're doing the outlet stores, right? When you walk in and someone's there telling you what the deal is, and you're like, great, I'm a bulk buyer. Are there any limits or anything that's off limits or anything like that? Goes a long way. Then like people will go get carts for us and help us out, right? Oh, can I put some more of these in your cart?
Can I order something for you? Yeah.
So I love setting the table like that. That's a great approach.
Yeah. And I think people are, and I understand why, like there's some places that I'm not going to share that I'm a reseller if I know that they're not. But at the same time, like when you're open to having that conversation, and when you maybe slowly into it, and if you say you're a bulk buyer and they get a little bit of a frown, like, well, you don't need to tell them more than that.
Yeah.
But if they're interested, they start talking, tell them what to do. We recently had our driveway redone, and I talked with it was when everything was done, I talked with the owner of it and just telling him like what I did, like why we needed basically we converted our garage into living space. This used to be a garage. This is normal living space now. And we had to redo our driveway is what the township said. And at the end of it, I told him what I did. And he said, hey, I actually know a guy that he has like just a ton of discounted Nike stuff, just like at his house. He's like a rep. He used to work with this company. Now he does this. And like he can get me tons of deals. And so after I left him a review, he connected me with him, and I'm meeting up with him next week. And so it's one of those things of just, don't be afraid to tell people what you do. Don't be afraid to, if you're comfortable going into these stores and, asking like, hey, I am a bulk buyer, which I really like this product, but hey, if this was like 10% off, I'd buy 100 of these. And being able to ask those questions, I mean, that sets you apart from others.
I think that's one of the reasons that the smaller ethnic stores are such a gold mine for us, or potential gold mines, because they are family owned. You're usually talking to the owner or the business partner when you walk in and have that conversation, as opposed to going into any big box store. You'd be lucky if you can track down a manager, right?
Right.
And it'll be a different one every time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's some good hints there. What other things do you get from your clients that you talk about, or questions that you think are common that you answer?
I hear all the time people and sometimes it's a brand new student, and sometimes it's a student that has been there for a while, but they get stuck at about 10,000 a month in sales. That seems like the common, somewhere around that time, them doing it solo, that's about the wall that they hit. And I don't think that's uncommon. And
I agree with that.
And it's around that time, you start thinking like, well, I'm not making a ton of money, so I don't know if I can fork over money for a virtual assistant. I don't know if I can go and I can pay for a prep center or prep help. And I do think that outsourcing is a huge thing, and there is a time to outsource everything. But I do think the first thing that everybody needs to do is you need to evaluate what you have. You need to try to see what systems you have now. What systems can you make better? What can you do just a little bit faster? What can you do? What can you organize better to save you time? And then once you do that, suddenly you get past that 10,000 mark, and then suddenly the profit opens up and it makes more sense to outsource. And then things really fly off. But just that conversation and what it is you need to tweak and what it is you need to outsource is different for every person. But the going from the solo to 10,000 to 10,000 and beyond, that's a very difficult time, and where I think a lot of sellers stop, or at least stop scaling, because it is hard, and it's frustrating to work near full time for that amount of sales. It is probably not full time income, but it's that once you get that push past that, that's where it just becomes possible to make this what you do and all you do.
We like to say at that point, you go from working in your business to working on your business. And so if you have any inefficiencies at that level and you don't address them there, they just exacerbate themselves when that growth happens. So if you're inefficient in your, prep and ship because you're doing it yourself, and you're going to scale that or, continue to grow, that is only going to get worse, right? If you're, inbound transportation is high because you sell a lot of large items and you're trying to maximize your profit. If you don't address that, then you're going to continue to have that problem as you grow. So I love what you're saying.
Yeah, it's a great example.
Yeah. So that's a great level to be at, where you're at 10K and you're like, Rob, I remember so like it was yesterday. We had the same conversation at the time I was doing coaching, and I was like to my coach, like, okay, we just did 12,000, but we are breaking our backs. Like, I don't know how we're going to get any bigger than this. Right. And I've told the story before, but my coach said, do you know how many people would die for, a $10,000 a month Amazon business? this is where now you start to scale and start outsourcing some stuff. And fortunately, we just figured it out as we were going, to make that happen. And it did happen. And once you let go of some stuff, things can happen much faster because you tend to be the bottleneck in your own business.
We still have to remember that. We tend to be the bottleneck in our own business. So we got to let go. Yes, mistakes are going to be made, but you're growing so much larger that those mistakes become much smaller impact than they would be if you're trying to do it all yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and there's with prepping, for example, that's something that for me, that was the first initial thing that was kind of hard to let go, because when I first outsourced, I outsourced to a prep center, and you literally don't see anything. There's 25, 30 people at this prep center. You don't know, hey, is somebody going to get my stuff, and all these fears on those things. And then for me personally, when I was around 15,000 in sales is when I got both a VA to start sourcing for me, and I got a prep center. And I remember my $10,000 month right before, I was working probably 30 hours a week. When I did like 25,000 the following month with a prep center to VA, I worked under 20 hours that week. And it blew my mind that I was like, I guess I'll just go source again. Like everything's done, and that was just a big light bulb for me of just the power of outsourcing. And I think it's important to keep in mind too, that it's, especially if you send things fulfilled by Amazon, it's delayed, right? Like you're putting in and I'm feeling this right now. Because I've started to RA, like I've sent out some really big shipments recently, and my sales don't show it. It's because it's not going to show it for 2 more months. And if I consist, and if I my tendency is like, man, I don't know if this is worth doing all this RA, doing this extra stuff for this. But if I for 2 months plow down and keep sending in what I send, then I'll be sitting in 2 months saying, oh, okay, I'm finally seeing the results. And now I do know why I was doing that. So just not getting disgruntled or frustrated when knowing that the results aren't showing immediately, where it does take a couple months. Sometimes there's always that 2-month lag.
The big swings do seem to take longer to have an impact, right? I think we get used to the more immediate gratification, where we when we're just getting started, I'm going to send in 10 items. It's a small shipment. It gets in, maybe you sell something inside of 2 weeks and you think, oh, wow, I can make these, changes to my business pretty quickly. And the reality is at scale, it does take a little bit longer for those things to impact, and patience is key.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. And I think this is a good time to talk about we talk about, when you get to 10,000, like that's just, you turn over and that's what happens. Getting from 0 to 10,000 is a big uphill climb. And the things that we're talking about here with outsourcing and stuff are after that. But that same thing applies when you first send in your first shipment. It's going to be 6 or 8 weeks before you see anything back for that. And you have to keep going every week before you see anything. That's very difficult for people. And the same principles apply there, which is why I brought that up then. But we're talking about when you get to $10,000 a month in sales and you're ready to outsource and kind of scale from there, right?
Right. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's the same thing. And it also, the reverse is true too, where I think it was last summer that, because my wife was busy and I was doing a lot more garden stuff, helping her, that my sales were really good. And I actually stopped working as much and I stopped putting as much in, even though I was having some really good months. And then it came October and I was like, where am I? Like my sales have dipped. Like what is going on? And it was the same thing. It's because 2 months prior, I hadn't put in the work that I had 4 months prior. And I go and I look and I have inventory lab and I pull my inventory valuation. I was like, oh my goodness, I just don't have very much. I don't have as much as I normally do in stock. And so, yeah, it works both ways. And so you can't get complacent with where you're at. And then like, man, this is nice. Like, you see those pictures people post of them with their feet up on the beach, like, man, automation. Yeah. Well, in 2 months, that automation is gone. Like there's going to be no sales if you just sit on the beach the whole time too. So yeah, but it's absolutely true for new sellers as well. That account reserve is a killer. And I hear a lot of people get frustrated and it's a line that sounds something along the lines of, where's my money?
Mhm.
You know, like I don't understand.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, there's sellers that have started with Amazon, you know, sometimes foreign sellers that are not selling correct products and they're selling counterfeit products. And Amazon has been burned in the past of paying them too soon. And because of that, we have to move as the slowest person can move, which means that Amazon isn't going to trust you for a couple of months until you show that your products are legit, until your customers don't return things, and then it unlocks, and you get more of your money back.
Yeah.
But yeah, those first 2-3 months of it taking you forever to send in shipments, you having to manually source and find everything for the first time, and then not getting paid right away is so frustrating. But I mean, the solution is you just have to keep going and keep plowing through, feed the beast, and send in inventory, and just the numbers add up after that if you keep doing the right things.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah. Brian told me that when I first started, when he was showing me how to do everything, is the one thing you can control is your shipments. How many shipments, how much is in your shipment? That's what you can control. Then the sales and the income and everything takes care of itself. But that's why those systems that you're talking about are important to get started as soon as possible. Figure out what you're doing every week, why you're doing it, and what you can expect appropriately from that. I love this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
So we were talking a lot about getting over that, 10, getting past the 10K sort of barrier.
Mhm.
We know from experience that a lot of folks struggle to get to that point. So how do you address that situation with your clients where it's like, not only, yeah, I sent some stuff in and I'm not getting my money back, but also it's hard.
It's hard to find stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes people too soon will want to get something like a virtual assistant to help them source, or they'll want to have a lead list to help them source. And the thing is, you just have to get really, really good at sourcing. I
Mhm.
think that's really what that comes down to, is being able to, and not with tools. Don't get Arbitrage Hero, don't get Tactical Arbitrage, don't get any of these things. And I mean, for the record, I don't use any of those. Me and my virtual assistant, we just manually source, reverse source, use Keepa and Keepa Product Finder, and
I'm here.
that's it.
Mhm.
That's all we do. We
Yeah.
don't do any of the fancy things. And one, because I think that if you can source really well like that, it has just as good a results as these tools. But really, that's how you find the things other people aren't finding. And
Yeah.
so, but getting really good at sourcing, honestly, that solves all your problems, because then it provides you the money to pay for the rest of your problems, right? If you
Yep.
have inventory, I mean, that's really what it is. And so, and not just, if you're doing a Keeper Product Finder search, and if you're going through, or manually, and you're going through 10,000 ASINs and you find 5, that's not what I'm talking about. Like, I'm not saying, hey, just find some. Over time, you need to figure out, where is the best way to find them? Where
Mhm.
can I find the most ASINs per hour? What method is working for me? And then doing that and figuring out which one of those you can do really well. Because if you can find 5 ASINs a day, and it's what I talked about at conference, but if you find 5 ASINs a day for 30 days, that's 150 ASINs. 150 active ASINs gets you over 10K. Um,
Exactly.
and it sounds too simple. It's simple, but it's hard. Like, it's simple, but it takes a lot of work. But it is as simple as that.
It really is. It really is. And totally agree with you on those numbers. We've seen it over and over and over. 100 ASINs, $10,000 to $15,000 a month in sales. If they're qualified ASINs, and then you have a
Right.
book of business to work with, then you can make it a better book of business, more profitable book of business, and a book of business that will pay for your outsourcing and things like that. But getting to that point is very important. Absolutely agree with that.
Mhm. Great. Okay. We've talked about the challenges to once you've got to 10K scaling, and then sort of getting good at sourcing to get to 10K. The challenges of doing the prep, maybe getting a VA. Any other common questions or angles, perspectives that you tend to share with your coaching clients?
And we kind of touched on this, but just, you have to do something different. When you think about, if anything that is for sale online everywhere in the United States, that anybody in the entire U.S. or outside the U.S. could purchase that or send to a prep center, and is always in stock. Those things are always going to be between $0 and $1.50 profit.
Yep.
That's it. And so a lot of people, like, that's, I mean, I see it in the Facebook group probably more than anything else, but I do hear it from some of my clients too, of like, I know how to source, I know how to find fast moving products, but there's no profit in anything. And it's because you have to venture away from that. And so it doesn't mean that, like, I mean, there are some things from Walmart that are available for everybody that, that I can get, but I'd say probably most of those, it's because maybe there's a supply chain issue, right? That it's not always in stock. It just happens that my local Walmart sells a lot of it, or no one else around here likes it. I don't know. So maybe there's a supply chain issue, and maybe it's a local thing. Maybe it's something that, like, now everybody can get Skyline chili everywhere. I do know for a fact that 10 years ago that wasn't true, and Walmart wasn't carrying it. And if I was in Cincinnati, I could have made a killing selling that. I have relatives in Florida that, like, anytime someone came to Florida, they were supposed to bring them Skyline. And so those local things, or doing the things that other people are not willing to do. Anytime I hear someone say, yeah, I don't do that because, like, that's hard, or, that's just a lot of hard work. Right there, that means that's an opportunity. If it's too hard for you to go in store and scan things, that's why retail arbitrage is more profitable than online arbitrage, because it's harder to do. You don't want to drive 20 minutes to that outlet. That's fine. That's why outlets are more profitable than retail arbitrage at big box stores, because it's harder to do. So find out that thing that other people aren't wanting to do, that for some reason you can do, or maybe you want to do, like maybe you love that kind of shopping, whatever it is, but find the things that other people don't want to do and aren't willing to do. Find out how to make a system and do that really, really well. And there's your niche. There's your gold mine for your
I love
business.
that.
Well
That's
said.
Perfect. Great. Well, this has been awesome, Grant, chatting with you about how you got started and kind of what your approach is as a coach in the Jim Cockrum coaching program. You are currently accepting new clients, right?
Yes, I will officially keep taking clients for a month after this podcast is released.
Okay.
So please don't release this in a year. I can't make that guarantee. We just did have conference, so I added a whole bunch of new students then. So if you are interested in coaching and you do want me to be your coach, sign up in the next month, and I'll be here. And if you hear this later, you can certainly ask, and
Sure.
And I might say yes. So
can't hurt to ask, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And Grant and many other coaches are available to help if Grant's not available as well. But
yeah, great coaching group here. So whether you can work with Grant as your preference, that's great. If he's not available, lots of other resources. So Grant, really appreciate your time today. I know we got going a little bit early this morning. I was still on my first cup of coffee, but appreciate you taking time out of your day and sharing with everyone from your heart. It really means a lot.
Yeah,
you're welcome. Thanks, you all.
All right. This is Grant Douglas. Thanks for being on the show. We'll talk with you soon.
Hey, thanks for joining us for today's show. Before I let you go, I've brought my friend Jeff Schick on the program once again. He always brings us great Amazon legal and policy tips and pointers. He always has some information that you're not going to hear anywhere else. It's worth hanging out. Typically on Wednesday episodes, we love to drop this on you. And I've got Jeff here again today. Yeah. Welcome back, buddy.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on here. So, today we're going to talk about everyone's least favorite topic once again, which is generic and misbranded ASIN suspensions. So I know I've mentioned this a couple times on the podcast. Back in October is when we first started seeing this enforced. So that's the first time we saw people suspended for listing on generic and misbranded ASINs. And since then, it's been a growing trend. So back in October, we had 5 sellers suspended. 4 of the 5 were reinstated. 1 of them was not. We'll talk about why that happened in a little bit. But then we saw that Amazon went dark, and we didn't see any more of these suspensions until June. And so around June 1st, we saw another 5 or so sellers get suspended for it. And then on July 1st, about another 5 to 7 suspended as well. So they are actively enforcing it, and it's something that they do really tend to care about, because unlike other suspensions where it's a fix-it suspension, misbranded ASIN suspensions fall under the fraud category. So they hit you with the book right out the bat, and they say your account's been deactivated under Section 3. Whereas a normal suspension that's like what I'd call a fix-it suspension is, hey, your account may be deactivated if you don't fix this issue, and you've got 72 hours to write a plan of action. So these are actual account deactivations. They're deactivating people right out the gate. There's no 72-hour warning. And they're saying, we believe your account's been used to engage in fraudulent or deceptive conduct, and it's because you're selling on ASINs on the wrong brand. So what does that look like from a seller perspective? Well, so far what we're seeing is we're selling on ASINs branded as generic, and these are branded products. So again, I'll give an example. I've got this box here of something I wanted to sell on Amazon, and of course my little blurring thing. It is a
wall plug charger thing. Yeah,
it's an outlet. It's a smart Wi-Fi plug. You plug a lamp into it, and that way you can use the Wi-Fi to turn it on and off. Well, the brand on it is actually TP-Link. Now, anyone that's familiar with TP-Link knows that they actually do sue sellers, so you have to be careful with selling their products. But if I was going to sell it on Amazon, that the brand would be TP-Link. It would not be generic. Even if I'm not authorized to sell TP-Link, I don't go create an ASIN that says generic. I don't find somebody else who's created an ASIN that says generic. Similarly, the brand is TP-Link. I wouldn't do TP-Link all as one word. I wouldn't do T-P link. I wouldn't do T.P.link or anything of that nature. It has to be correct, or else Amazon considers that a misbranded ASIN.
Even if you're not the one setting up the ASIN, and this is what we want to emphasize,
Correct.
because especially for our new sellers in our community, we're teaching them the replens model. Go sell against existing listings. They're already set up and have good momentum. Well, some of them, even though they look great on RevSeller and they look great on Keepa, and you're excited you're going to make some money, check the brand and make sure that the brand matches. And 98% of the time it does. But there are some hot sellers out there that have been misbranded, and it's a ticking time bomb to where Amazon comes in, finds everyone who's selling against it. It could be 50 or 70 sellers. And you're thinking, oh, this is great. Look, we're all doing it. What could be wrong? Well, the brand complains and says they've got our brand wrong. And Amazon comes in swinging the hammer pretty heavy, it sounds like.
They do, and there's no rhyme or reason. One of the sellers brought it to my attention that he's suspended now. He's been suspended for a month for selling on the wrong brand ASIN. For his, it was a paint product, and the brand was listed as paint instead of the brand of the actual paint itself. And he's like, "Why is this happening? There's 80 sellers on the listing right now." And I said, I can't tell you why they didn't go after those other 80 sellers. But I can tell you that those sellers are definitely not in the clear, because you know how they're going to handle it when they get caught. So it is a matter of time before 80 more sellers get deactivated for that very same ASIN that our seller was on. And so the good news is that back in October, we did get everyone, all but one person back up. It did take a range from, about 1 to 6 months for people to come back up. And it just, Amazon works at their own timeline as to what they feel when they feel like they've given enough punishment to somebody, is my impression. There's really no rhyme or reason why they take as long as they do or as short as they do. But it's, and every case manager is different for who the investigators that are reading those appeals. But I can say that, the one positive thing is that if you have good sourcing methods and you have a good supply chain verification, then it makes the chances of reinstatement significantly better. The seller who was shown the door was buying from bad wholesalers. And so he was buying from bad wholesalers, and Amazon's attorneys basically came in and they said, not only was he on the wrong listings, but he was buying from bad sources. So 2 strikes, we'd have no confidence that your seller will add value to our platform in the future. And so they decided to keep his account deactivated. They did release his money, so there was a semi-happy ending there. Because under these Section 3 suspensions, Amazon can hold your funds indefinitely. But we did at least get him his money back. But yeah, they did say, we don't want you on our platform, and that's the sad reality, is that a little 5 minutes extra due diligence when listing these products would have prevented a lifetime ban on Amazon.
Yeah.
So
make sure you're selling against good ASINs. Make sure you're buying from legitimate sources that the distributor would say, yeah, those guys are legit. The brand would be happy to hear that you're buying it from that source. You want to stay legit. There's so much legitimate opportunity. I hate to see people kind of playing in these gray areas of getting burned. It's just not necessary. So, well, thank you for the great advice, man. We're going to do this again next week, right?
Sounds good.
Awesome. Always appreciate you, Jeff. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
See you.